Some remarkable changes are happening right now in the Texas housing market. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about home prices, housing inventory, price projections, and much, much more for the four biggest cities in Texas. That's Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, and Austin, Texas. If you guys get any value out of today's video, then please hit the like button. Also, if you guys are interested in buying or selling a house in the Texas housing market, anywhere in Texas, my team is actually licensed loan officers in Texas. So if you guys want to get pre-approved to buy a house, then please reach out to me, which is jason@meetjasonwalter.com. With that said, let's begin today's video because I have a lot to share. Let's first talk about inventory levels because inventory is a really good snapshot to see, which direction the housing market is headed. And again, I'm going to talk about those four major metros. So for the nation as a whole, inventory is up by 22% from 12 months ago. So on a national level, inventory is up by 22%. However, compared to December of 2019, that's obviously pre-COVID, on a national level, we're down by nearly 16%. Now, every housing market's different, so take a look at this. This, by the way, is according to ResiClubAnalytics.com. So here's a year-over-year change for Texas. So let's first have a look at Dallas-Fort Worth. That's up by 31.1%. That's not my biggest takeaway though, because look at this, 22,744 existing houses for sale by the end of December last year, 2024. That, by the way, is the highest levels for the month of December since, keywords here, at least December of 2016. Also, it's more than double that of December of 2020. Back then, there was only, 9,400, and 21, it was even lower than that at 6,200 houses for sale. Now, looking at the second biggest metro, or I guess Dallas is probably, I think, the biggest metro than Houston is. So Houston is up by 24.5 year over year, whereas Dallas is up by 31.1. Also, kind of similar regarding Dallas as well. In December 24, there's 26,614 houses for sale. That's higher compared to the past several years, but still lower than 2018. At that time, it was at 27,000. So inventory growing substantially over the past couple of years, but in Houston, it's actually lagging behind pre-COVID levels. Now looking at San Antonio, it's up by only 16%, so about half the gains we're seeing in Dallas, Texas. There's over 11,000 homes for sale by the end of December last year. That's at least the highest level for the month since at least December of 2016. In fact, that's basically like 4 times the rate we saw back in December of 21. Back then, less than 4,000 homes for sale. Also, let's have a look at Austin, Texas. So Austin, Texas is only up by 13%. This is pretty wild because this is kind of a change over the past several months. We're not seeing the inventory absolutely skyrocketing in Austin, Texas right now. It's still up greatly compared to pre-COVID, but the year-over-year gains are actually losing momentum, which I'll share with you guys here. So it's up by 13%. There's around 8,300 homes for sale. That is the highest level for the month since at least December of 2016. But again, the year-over-year changes are much lower compared to Dallas, for example. Now, if you look at a map compared to December of 2019 on a national level, you guys can see here that much of the Midwest, as well as the Northeast, has a lack of houses for sale. So Hartford, Connecticut's down 76%, Detroit, Chicago, Milwaukee, all down greatly by more than 30%. In contrast, much of the South has a big increase of inventory. Punta Gorda, Florida, up by a whopping 93%. Phoenix is up by 27%, whereas in Sacramento, we're down 14.4%. Now I can zoom in here looking at Texas as a whole. Let's look at Dallas. Dallas compared to December 2019, it's up by only 15.9%. And remember, on a national level, we're down by nearly 16%. Whereas in the Dallas metro, it's up by 15.9%. Also, we're seeing gains up by 36.5% in the Austin metro area. San Antonio is up by 20.5%, whereas the Houston metro is only up by 0.9%. So relatively flat from about 5 years ago. Now here's another way to look at this. Here's these 4 metros we're looking at: Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, and Austin. This is kind of what really catches my attention. The year-over-year changes in Austin are losing momentum also for the past 2 years as well. But looking at the 5-year, 4-year, and 3-year chart, it's kind of off the charts, right? So in Austin, Texas, up by 13% year over year, a little bit lower than the 16% gains in San Antonio, whereas Dallas is up by 31%. The 2-year chart, we're seeing big increases in Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, but only up by 17% in Austin. This is where it really gets crazy though. 3-year chart up by a whopping 235% in Austin, and Dallas is up by 264%. But the 5-year chart is really kind of like in my opinion, the most important thing to look at when you kind of want to gauge which direction the housing market's headed. Because Austin, Texas is up by a whopping 36%, whereas Houston is relatively flat from 5 years ago. Now, if you guys are curious, I added the national average. So again, it's down 16%, but in Austin, we're up by 36%. The 4-year chart only up by 42%, but we're seeing gains over 100% in Dallas, San Antonio, and Austin, Texas. All right, let's change gears slightly here and talk about home prices compared to the peak back in 2022. As you guys can see, Austin, Texas is down 22.7%. Punta Gorda is down by 14.7%. Phoenix is down by 9.2%. So much of these southern metros and parts of the West are down compared to the peak of 2022. Now, looking at home price changes based on Zillow's home value index from 12 months ago, it kind of paints a different story here because Austin, Texas is only down 3.2% year over year, but Punta Gorda, Florida is down 8.3%. This all makes sense, right? Because Austin, Punta Gorda, Florida has a lot of houses for sale compared to 5 years ago, and therefore home prices are actually going down. In fact, looking at Austin, Texas, it's down 3.2% year over year. Also, it's down compared to 2 years and 3 years ago as well. The 3-year change is down 10.3%. So if you bought a house for the top dollar over the past several years, you could be at a negative value compared to your purchase price. However, if you bought a house 4 or 5 years ago especially, you're probably in the green there because a 5-year change, even despite this decrease in prices over the past 3 years, it's still up by nearly 37%. Now let's look at San Antonio. San Antonio is down 1.8% year over year, but still up by 31.3% over the past 5 years. It is down 5% compared to 2 years ago. In Houston, Texas, a different animal here. The year-over-year change is up by 0.6%. The 1-year, 2-year chart also up as well. The 5-year is up by a whopping 36.3%. Now looking at Dallas-Fort Worth area, prices are down compared to 1 and 2 years ago, down by 0.9% over the past 2 years. However, home values based on Zillow's home value index is up by a staggering 43.1% from 5 years ago. All right, let's change gears slightly here and talk about price reductions. Let's first have a look at the national average, then we'll look at California and then Texas to kind of provide some comparisons. So on a national level, according to Altos Research, the share price drops, and this is for the week ended January 17th, 2025. So very much recent to say the least. So on national average, the share price drops is at 33.5%. So basically 1/3 of all houses for sale have reduced their asking prices in order to get a home buyer. That's higher compared to last year by a little bit. Last year was at 31%, but at 33.5%, still lower compared to 2023. However, of course, much higher compared to 22, 2021, and 2020. So right now the share price drops at 33% on a national average. In California, it's a little bit lower than that at 27%. In Texas, though, let's take a look at that. The share price drops in Texas at 35%. So a little bit higher compared to the national average. Let's have a look at that right here. So just under 35%, more or less in line with last year at 32%. But at 34.5%, this is still lower compared to the same time frame in 2023. Back then, it was at 38%. And the big change, in my opinion, is this right here. Let me just zoom in. Look at the trough back in 22. Back then, this is for Texas as a whole, it was at 18.25%. So about 2 of every 10 houses had a price drop back then in Texas. Then it skyrocketed to about 46% by the time we hit November that year. So the share price drops absolutely skyrocketed due to mortgage rates increasing from 3 to about 7 to 8% by year end. And of course, that caused inventory to pile up, and therefore price projections absolutely skyrocketed as well. Now, what's different compared to what happened last year is different compared to 22 though, because the peak, or I should say the trough, in 2024 was only at 32%. Then increased to only 43%. So increasing by about 11 basis points last year, whereas in 2022, the share price drops absolutely skyrocketed. Now, I will say though, just kind of zooming out over the past 5 years, the share price drops at basically 35% right now is still higher compared to pre-COVID levels. Back then, the share price drops was only 29% in Texas. Let's also have a look at inventory levels as well on Altos, which is actually a little bit more recent. As of mid-January, 105,000 houses for sale, much higher compared to a year ago at only 82,000. Also much higher compared to the same time frame in 2023. Back then, 65,000. Obviously, we're going to be way higher compared to 22 and 21, but also higher compared to January 31st, 2020. Back then, 82,000 houses for sale. Now there's over 100,000 at 105,000 right now. Just for comparison's sake, looking at California though, the stats kind of paint a different story. In California, 37,000 homes for sale. That's higher than past several years. We're still lagging behind pre-COVID levels. Back then, nearly 42,000 houses for sale. Now again, there's only 37,000. Going back to Texas, let's look at how fast or how slow houses are selling. This is days in the market, the time frame when a homeowner lists their home for sale until they accept an offer from home buyer. The median days in the market in Texas is at 91 days. This is at least a multi-year high right now, because looking at pre-COVID levels, at this time, the days in the market was only 84 days. Now it's at 91 days. Therefore, for the state as a whole, houses are taking about 1 week longer to sell compared to pre-pandemic levels. So I'd love to hear from you guys. What's your biggest takeaway from today's video? Mine is that, I could be talking about housing market stats every day, right? But what it comes down to is that when you buy a house, it's a personal decision based on your life circumstances. Do you have a growing family, a job relocation, death or divorce, whatever it is. So my advice for you guys, whether it's looking to buy a house in Texas, Florida, California, wherever it is, make sure it's right for you based on your own circumstances. So my advice for you guys, which has been the same advice I've been telling people for about 10 plus years as an agent here in Sacramento, is buy when it's right for you. Don't listen to other people telling you not to buy a house, and also for people telling you to buy a house as well. It's a personal decision. Having said that, I would not buy a house unless you have long-term time horizons of at least 5, or just say 7 to 10 plus years, have a stable job, an emergency fund, and also long-term time horizons, like I mentioned as well. With that said, if you guys are interested in buying a house in Texas, then please reach out to me at jason@meetjasonwalter.com, and I'll connect you to our team, which is licensed in Texas. I am not licensed in Texas, but our team is. With that said, I appreciate you guys so much for watching today's video. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next video.